In terms of South Korea, jumping to the opening of the Olympics, which will represent the United States and our delegation at, which is very exciting. What do you make of the sort of softening between North Korea and South Korea in their allowing their team, small team, to participate in the Olympics? What does that signal to you?
The president sent me to the region a year ago, and I'll be honored to lead a delegation to the Olympics in South Korea in the next month. But the message the president sent me to deliver a year ago is the same that I will deliver when I arrive in Korea again and I visit Japan again, and that is that the era of strategic patience is over. For literally 2 decades, one administration after the other has exercised a level of patience and negotiation that has resulted in the dictatorship in North Korea developing ballistic and nuclear missiles that may well threaten the United States of America as we speak. That's unacceptable. President Trump has brought unprecedented economic and diplomatic pressure to bear on the regime in Pyongyang. We'll continue to do that. And part of my message in going is going to be to stand with those American athletes and know that we're cheering them on and wishing them well. But the underlying message is the president is sending us there to make it clear that we stand with South Korea. We stand with our allies in the region, and we will continue to bring maximum economic and diplomatic pressure to bear until North Korea abandons its nuclear and ballistic missile programs that threaten the United States of America.
In terms of Egypt, which you will also visit, there has been some anger there over the decision to move the capital of Israel to Jerusalem. Your meetings were canceled with the Coptic Christian leaders, with Mahmoud Abbas. Can you really move the peace process forward if you can't meet with that side of the equation?
I'm looking very much forward to meeting with President el-Sisi in Egypt, King Abdullah in Jordan, and also visiting Israel. I mean, it was more than 20 years that one administration after another and one Congress after another recognized that Jerusalem was the capital of Israel, but no American president would step forward and make that decision a reality. President Trump had the courage of his convictions to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and it'll be my great honor as vice president to visit and affirm that decision. That being said, the president also, in making that decision, Martha, said that if the parties can agree on a two-state solution, that we'll support it, that the president recommitted the United States to engagement in the peace process. And what I'll tell President el-Sisi and King Abdullah and other leaders in the region is that we remain committed to peace. But what the president did in making that decision and in making it a reality was he essentially took off of the table an issue that really wasn't negotiable to this administration or to the American people. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. The president said that we have recognized the obvious, we have affirmed the will of the American people, but now our hope is that we can move forward and begin to discuss those issues that can be negotiated in the hopes of achieving a lasting peace.
So what concrete steps have been taken so far to actually move the embassy there?
The planning is underway. You know, as you're well aware, we have a consulate in Jerusalem today, but as the president said, it would be necessary for us to make planning, to choose a location, and to develop the structure.
Target date?
I think it will probably be several years before we cut the ribbon, but the decision is made. We're moving our embassy to the capital of Israel. It will be my great honor as vice president to visit Israel's capital later this month.
President el-Sisi and your meeting with him. Some feel that we need to push back on that relationship, that presenting it as a strong partnership doesn't really tell the whole story, that they have entered into military deals to do reciprocal base agreements with Russia, that they've sided with Russia in the UN when it comes to Syria and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict against our interests. Is that something that you're going to bring up with the president of Egypt?
I've had the privilege of meeting President el-Sisi when he visited Washington, D.C., and I'm grateful to have the opportunity to visit with him. I expect we'll talk about a broad range of issues, and I'll be delivering a message of the appreciation that President Trump has for the relationship that he's forged with President el-Sisi, but also our desire to see Egypt continue to step forward as a leader in the region, a leader for peace, And also, one of the issues I'll be addressing as well is the plight that is facing Christian and religious minorities. Egypt has seen in recent days even great violence against Christian churches. And at President Trump's direction last fall, we're reorganizing USAID funding to go directly to Christian NGOs in the region, not only across the Arab world, but specifically in areas of Iraq and Syria beset by war.
But just to follow up, in terms of aid to Egypt and military funding, there's been discussions about cutting that back in the Trump administration. Will that be followed through on? And will you essentially say that if there aren't more accessions to human rights standards that we abide by in Egypt, that they would risk losing that military funding? Well,
I think the support that we provide Egypt is a key element of our relationship. But you know, ultimately, my message is going to be, how can we find ways to continue to strengthen the ties between the United States and Egypt and make it possible for us to move forward in a way that advances the security of both of our countries and the security of the region.
Okay. Congress, just hopping forward to your visit to Nevada this week. You'll be there to support Dean Heller. How strong do you see your role in terms of the 2018 elections? A lot of the prognosticators are looking at their models and saying that Republicans are going to have a pretty uphill battle in 2018.
Well, for the party in power in the White House, history teaches that first midterm election is always a challenge, but President Trump and I are very optimistic. I mean, think about the progress that we've made in the last year. I mean, this is a president that's rolled back more federal red tape than any president in American history. The appointment of Justice Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, more Court of Appeals justices in a single year than any president in history, historic tax cuts, all of which has created an environment where 2 million new jobs, unemployment at a 17-year low. You've reflected on African-American unemployment is at a 17-year low as well in this country. We're making tremendous progress, and I think it's all a result of the leadership that President Trump has provided, and we think that's a great story to tell, and the President and I are absolutely committed to traveling all across this country, supporting candidates for the House and Senate and governors across the country to make sure that we continue to have partners all across this nation to advance the President's agenda.
Well, we look forward to watching all of that, and good luck on your trip. We wish you the best as you set off for the Middle East and for South Korea in the Olympics as well. Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for your time today. Good to see you as always.
Thank you, Martha.